Welcome to the online classes of Career Guidance Bureau. Today is our first session on HSA English. As you all know, our syllabus is divided into 8 parts. The first module is of poetry, second one drama, third one prose and fiction, fourth one it is literary criticism or terms, linguistics and phonetics and history of language comes to the fifth part, and the sixth module is modern English usage, seventh one is basic grammar, and the eighth one is teaching of English. First, we will be dealing with the literature part, that is the first 3 modules, module 1, 2 and 3, and in that itself I have divided that into Indian literature, British literature, American literature, etc. So today we will be dealing with Indian literature. Coming to our portions in Indian English literature, we have Indian English poetry, Indian English drama, Indian English prose and fiction. In case of Indian English poetry, we have these poets, that is Tagore, Ezekiel, Kamala Das, A.K. Ramanujan and Meena Alexander. Tagore's Where the Mind is Without Fear, Ezekiel's Night of the Scorpion, Kamala Das's An Introduction, A.K. Ramanujan's Obituary and Meena Alexander's A House of Thousand Doors. Coming to the Indian English prose and fiction, we have 3 writers and their works, Dr. Radhakrishnan, Shashi Deshpande and Arundhati Roy. Dr. Radhakrishnan's prose, Humanities versus Science, Shashi Deshpande's Roots and Shadows, Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things. So we start with Indian English poetry. Indian English poetry means it is Indian writers writing in English. Before, there were British writers who wrote about India. That was before independence, etc. Almost 150 years back, from almost 150 years back onwards, we got our writers started writing in English, and the English education, it started in India with Macaulay's, Viceroy Macaulay's Minutes. So from that time onwards, English became a language which could be learnt by even by the Indians, the natives, and as a result the natives, they became, at first it was only for the upper class people that English was made available. Later on even the lower class people or without any caste or creed basis, people started learning English. So it started with Macaulay's Minutes, and that was introduced in 1835. So from then onwards, when people started learning English, they started writing in English. So what is the difference between English people writing about Indian myths, legends, etc. and Indian people writing about India? The main difference is that Indian people or Indian writers knew much better or knew much more than what the British people wrote. So from then onwards, we got a form of poetry written by Indians but in English language. And we can consider Derosio as the first Indian poet writing in English. Indian English poetry can be divided into 3 phases. The first phase, second phase and third phase. First phase being pre-independence, second phase being independence in the sense during the independence struggle, and the third phase being post-independence poems or poets. So the first phase poets, that is pre-independence poets, includes Derosio, Toru Dutt, etc. So Derosio being called as the first Indian poet writing in English. The speciality of these people, that is the pre-independence poets, were that they tried to utilize the legends which prevailed in India in their poems. The second phase of poets consists of Sarojini Naidu, Tagore, Aurobindo, etc. Sarojini Naidu was called as the Nightingale of India. Tagore and Aurobindo were called as the philosopher poets. Tagore actually he tried to find the beauty in nature, whereas Aurobindo did that in a spiritual way. That is, his poems were much more of spirituality than which related to the everyday human human life. Next is the third phase of poetry. Coming to the third phase of poetry, it is post-independence poetry, and this poetry can also be called as the experimental poetry. The poets were A.K. Ramanujan, Kamala Das, Dom Moraes, Jayanta Mahapatra, etc. These poets were influenced by W.B. Yeats, W.H. Auden, etc. That means the Western poets who did experimental themes, or who brought about experimental themes in their works. The themes in these poems were urbanization, independence, then the new trends in the modern world like television, film, etc. So here among these poets we have to study in detail Rabindranath Tagore and Nissim Ezekiel. So for the time being we will move on to Rabindranath Tagore. He is the Bengali poet, playwright, critic, a musician, painter, etc. That means he is a multifaceted personality, born in a Bengali family, to Rabindranath Tagore and Sharada Devi being his parents. The name of his family house is Jora Sanko, and they owned a family boat called as Padma, and he founded the Vishwabharati University. And he was the only Indian who won Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913 for his work Gitanjali. Gitanjali means song offerings. Gitanjali is actually a collection of 103 poems, and almost all the poems are in the form of sonnets. But the thing is that these were originally written in Bengali, and it was a transcreation of Tagore himself to English. That means he didn't translate it to English, instead he transcreated, that is from the original Bengali version he took certain poems and translated that to English. At the same time he made necessary changes. When a work is changed, that means necessary changes are made in a work by the writer himself, that type of translation is what is called as transcreation. So the English version of Gitanjali is a transcreation of the Bengali version, and he has taken many poems from other sources. Other sources means other collections also. So it is there is a total of 103 poems in Gitanjali, in English Gitanjali, and the meaning of Gitanjali is song offering, and it won the Nobel Prize, the first, and till now nobody in India has won a Nobel Prize in Literature. He was the only person who won Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913, but he declined that Nobel Prize based on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Tagore is a philosopher poet, and the main theme which can be seen in his poems is spiritualism, mysticism, etc. He is even called as the Bard of Bengal. Tagore is the author of two national anthems. One is India's national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, and the other one is the national anthem of Bangladesh, Amar Sonar Bangla. It is said that the national anthem of Sri Lanka is influenced by the poems of Rabindranath Tagore. And even though we consider Tagore as one of the prominent Indian writer writing in English, the reality is that, or the truth is that, he has written only one poem, that is a single poem in English. All the other poems were written in Bengali, and then he himself translated that to English. The only poem which he wrote in English is none other than The Child. So keep in mind, The Child is very, very important because it is the only poem written by Tagore in English. All the other poems of Tagore were written in Bengali, and all those were translated to English. Tagore wrote 12 novels in total, and Gora is the longest novel of Tagore. Where the Mind is Without Fear is the 35th poem in Tagore's Gitanjali. This is what is given in our syllabus. So this poem might have probably been written in 1900, but not in the name of Where the Mind is Without Fear, but in the name of Prarthana, and that too in Bengali language. In 1901, this was published in the Naivedya, in the collection called Naivedya, and in 1911, Tagore translated this poem into English, and it was from then onwards it was known under the title Where the Mind is Without Fear, and this is included in the Gitanjali, that means the Nobel Prize winning Gitanjali, as the 35th sonnet. The Nobel Prize won anthology as the 35th sonnet. While Tagore wrote this poem, India and Indians were eagerly waiting for freedom. So Tagore, through this poem, Tagore actually idealized the freedom that is what is present in his mind, or he gave the ideas of what the freedom should be in a country like India. And actually this is written in the form of a prayer to God Almighty. Tagore, through this poem, prays to God Almighty that his country should be uplifted to such a position that the people in his country will be able to enjoy the freedom. We'll start with the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So, as you all know, this is a sonnet type poem, but the thing is that it cannot be considered as a perfect sonnet. But in Bengali, when he wrote, it was in the form of a perfect sonnet. But when it came to English, or when he translated it into English, it is not in the form of a perfect sonnet. So, but it is in a single sentence, a single complex sentence. When you count, you can see that there are so many, there are almost 7, not almost, actually there are 7 where, W-H-E-R-E, where in this poem, okay. And so with a single main clause, all these parts, word where is there, all these are considered as the subclause, and with the last line being the main clause. So this is a poem which contains so many subclauses, particularly with the help of the word where. There are 7 wheres in this poem, W-H-E-R-E, 7 number of wheres, where in the poem. So actually this is a single, we can consider this as a single sentence with 7 subclauses and a single main clause. And coming to this poem, this is not in the form of a perfect sonnet, but the Bengali version of this is in the form of a perfect sonnet. Then coming to the explanation, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free. So the poet is telling us about, or the poet is giving us what is there in his mind about his dream of his own country's freedom. He says that his country should be a place where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. That is, the people in his country should be able to live a life without any fear in their mind, and they should be able to hold their head right up, because that means they should have a self-respect of their own. Where knowledge is free. Next he comes to tell us about knowledge. So he tells us that education should be free. Education should be free means in those times of India, education was not imparted to each and every person. Instead it was restricted to the higher class people only, and the lower class people were not at all given a chance to attain education. So he might be hinting on that. And apart from that, what what he says is, he was a person who doesn't want to move on with a restricted form of education. That means a school education was not what he intended in his life or what he liked in his life. Instead, he wanted an education which could be imparted by nature. Maybe by free education, he might be saying or hinting that also. So the phrase free education has two meanings. One is that the education should be free. That means people in India without the barriers of caste or creed should be able to attain education. That can be the first one. And the second meaning can be the students or the children, small children should be able to acquire knowledge from nature rather than being restricted in a school or in a classroom education. Where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Now he is telling us about the world which is being broken up into narrow domestic walls. See, domestic walls means within a country, the civil problems within a country. In India, the civil problems in India was nothing but it was the caste, creed, superstitions, etc. So he tells the people that, or he prays to God that I should get a country which is not at all broken up or divided by the superstitious beliefs or the caste and creed which exist now. Where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. Now, see, again he tells or prays to God that his world or the freedom should be given to a country where the words of the people are mixed up with truth. That is, the people will never ever be liars. The people will be speaking truth. And then he again says that he wants a country where people will move on. That means work hard continuously to attain perfection in their goal or aim. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. So again he says that, see, the consciousness of the people or the ability to reason in the people should not be in the form of a dreary desert. That means should not move into the dull desert sand of dead habit. That means the people should not go behind the dead habits. Dead habits here might be, he might be hinting of the superstitions. So the people of the country which attains freedom should never ever go back to the superstitions that once prevailed in the country. Where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action. Then he also prays to God that the mind and action of my people, that means the freedom attained country of India, the mind and action of my people should also be led by God Almighty rather than by anybody else. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So he says, see, into that heaven of freedom where everything is perfect, I pray to God Almighty that let my people awake. So see, this is the explanation of the poem, and this is actually in the form of a prayer to God Almighty. He is praying to God Almighty, keeping in mind that his country will attain freedom within no time. Okay, so see, maybe there might have been a sort of worry in his mind whether the freedom will be utilized properly by the people of India, because after being under slavery for so many years, Tagore was not sure how people were going to react to the freedom that they attained. So it might be maybe keeping that in mind also, he might be praying to God to lead his country in a proper way. And whatever it is, he says that the people of his country should attain freedom, and they should have a self-respect, and they should not be bowing their heads in front of anybody, and they should be hardworking people also. They should be able to work hard in such a way that they will attain perfection in their aim or in their goal. So all these are the prayers of Tagore to God Almighty. So through these prayers, Tagore might be telling us, that means telling his readers, what his idea of freedom, that means what is his idea of freedom is. Now we are moving on to the important points that should be kept in mind. As you all know, it is the multiple choice questions. It can be asked in any way. So anyway, in the sense, even the smallest point can be asked from the poem, and this poem is written in the form of a free verse without any rhyme scheme. There is no proper rhyme scheme, and it is written in the form of a free verse. And again, keep in mind, if a question is being asked whether it is a sonnet or not, keep in mind that it is not a sonnet, but the Bengali version is a sonnet, okay, and it is written in free verse without any proper rhyme scheme. And now coming to the next point that should be kept in mind is that the purpose of writing this poem. The purpose of writing this poem is that he might have thought in mind that the people should not be, that means should not be behind the superstitious beliefs that existed in India. Instead, they should be able to think rationally. Might be that is the reason why he has written such a poem in which he idealizes the points that or ideas that are there in his mind of a free India. Why he might be stressing on superstitions is that India was a country which was full of superstitious beliefs. So when during Tagore's time, etc., that means during independence, etc., people started moving from their superstitious beliefs to some sort of rational thinking. So Tagore also wanted his people not to go behind superstitions, instead to think rationally and to think logically. So the main purpose of writing this poem is to make his people aware that they should not think superstitiously, or they should not go behind superstitious beliefs. Instead, they should think rationally. Next, coming to the theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is that Tagore prays to God Almighty to lift his country as well as his people to such a position that they will be able to enjoy the freedom in the best possible way. So he wanted his people to enjoy the freedom that they are going to attain in the best possible way. And maybe he also might have in mind that the people should not be confused once they attain freedom, because till then they were under the British rule. So on a fine morning when they get freedom, people will be a bit confused. So it is in the form of a prayer. Tagore is praying to God Almighty that he should give strength to his people in order to enjoy freedom in the best possible way. Heaven of freedom is a phrase which is there in the poem. So through heaven of freedom, the poet might be thinking of the situation of his country once it attains freedom. That means his country should be like a heaven, without any prejudices, without any superstitious beliefs, without any narrow domestic walls of creed, caste, etc. The country should not be distorted. That means country should not be in the form of fragments or pieces. Instead, it should be in a united, or it should be as a united whole. So the poet might be thinking that also in mind when he said heaven of freedom. And then see, this poem is not a poem basically for India alone. It is a poem which is for the whole world. Even the world is being distracted and distorted and divided based on the border and based on the caste, creed, race, etc., etc. From that time onwards, it has existed in the world. So at this present scenario, scenario, this poem is very, very important because it is not a poem. Actually, Tagore has not written it, even though he has used the word domestic, etc. It is about the country of India, or his dream of India that he is telling us. That's all. But the thing is that this poem can be used in a wide manner also. That means this poem can be used in the present scenario to the whole world, which man needs such a whole world that to be united and not to be divided. That means in the present situation, the world should not be divided based on caste, creed, etc., and racism, borders, etc. So it should be in a united whole form, or it should be united and it should be a whole world. So this poem has significance even in the present scenario.